everyone, I'm Leslie Hernandez and I'm on the social impact team at Unity. I'm excited that you've joined us in our session where you'll learn how educational institutions and organizations have used real time 3D to drive positive impact. Today, you'll hear from various luminaries who have fostered social impact creators and created projects to advance social good. First, we'll hear from Michael McCready, an educator and researcher from Lethbridge College. He'll share how his institution has applied VR and AR technologies to solve challenges in key Alberta sectors. Secondly, you'll hear from Dr. Kenichi Soga, professor at the University of California, Berkeley, who will share how his institution has leveraged technology to create wildfire evacuation simulation. And lastly, you'll hear from Steve Grubbs, CEO and founder at Victory XR. He will share more on the partnership with Fisk University to launch one of the first virtual reality cadaver labs in the world. Before we kick it off, at the end we will have time for Q&A, so make sure to put any questions that you have in the chat box below. So now let's dive right in. I'm going to kick it off over to Michael.
Hi, thanks, Leslie, and welcome today. Like she mentioned, at Lethbridge College, we've really embraced real-time 3D programs, and particularly virtual and augmented reality. I wanted to just share my screen and talk a little bit about the process and some of the activities that we're doing at Lethbridge College. So at Lethbridge College, in 2019, we established the Spatial Technologies Applied Research and Training Initiative, or START. And really, the whole purpose of this initiative is to work with organizations in helping them identify opportunities for spatial technologies such as XR or in VR and AR to be implemented into their workflow. One of the key things about the work that we do in our research is that we're looking at involving a really close knit relationship between our students, our faculty researchers, and our industry. And we've got a number of partners in various sectors, like Leslie had alluded to, where we're working with, from healthcare and trades to tourism and emergency response, and helping them look at ways that real-time 3D programs could be implemented to improve their bottom line, save lives, and reduce risk. One such project is related to caregivers. Through a lot of studies that we've done, there is a fairly high caregiver attrition when we're working with clients with just dementia, both in the informal and the formal caregiver side, as you can see in the slide, where there's a lot of burnout and overturn and a lot of caregiver stress that they face and working with clients with dementia, where they're going into a room and they're not sure what they're going to encounter that day, and things that may have worked the day before aren't working today and really causing them a lot of anxiety. And so we're working with a number of organizations to help solve this solution using virtuality and the Unity platform. We're looking at building what we're calling the caregiver platform. And our project, our research project, is entitled Building Self-Efficacy Through Immersive Education. Our funding partner is a research funding organization in Alberta called Alberta Innovates, and our technology partner is Red Iron Labs. And we're looking at providing opportunities for caregivers to practice on-demand training. Currently, training kind of solutions are related to focus groups and to role play and require off-site kind of travel, and really has a low level of participation for a variety of problems that they might be facing. So we're looking at creating a virtuality platform that will allow these caregivers to rehearse and practice working with clients with dementia. So in this screenshot you can see here is our first scenario, working with a fictional person called Vivian, whereas the caregiver, you're helping Vivian get ready to go for lunch in the cafeteria, helping her get washed and get dressed and get her, get prepared. And as you can imagine, if you've ever had someone who's suffered with dementia, a lot of times things that may work the day before don't work today. And so we're creating a robust system that will allow these caregivers that practice. And so the platform is going to be built, as I mentioned before, on the Unity platform, but it's going to be scenario based, where we work with nurses and care facilities to provide a variety of scenarios, that almost like that choose your own adventure approach, where you really are trying to navigate that system, navigate that interaction. And what may have worked yesterday may not work today, because that's kind of the nature of dyslexia. You can see here one of my colleagues, Tyler Heaton, in the motion capture suit. Vivian is actually going to be powered through motion capture to provide a more sense of authenticity and realism in her animation and her movement. And we're also using speech recognition that will allow the caregivers to not have to click on a UI per se, but will allow them to speak to Vivian or to the other care patients there. And we're working really closely, not just with Red Iron Labs and our funding partner, but with a number of care facilities in Alberta to help them provide quality assurance on the scenarios and on the interactions that we're going to have with the fictitious patients here. And this project has a number of recent grads working on this project, both from the animation cleanup to the modeling. And this is just a sample of what we are doing at Lethbridge College to help organizations be able to implement the real-time technology programs to improve their workflow, to improve the communities, and to improve their bottom line. I want to thank you for the time here, and I would like to turn it over to Dr. Kenichi Sogo.
Hi, I'm Kenichi Soga from UC Berkeley. Wildfires have become a recurrent issue in cities and towns of the Western United States, and we're currently struggling to have a good emergency planning because wildfire can be unpredictable. However, we need to provide sufficient protection to ensure the safety of the community, and therefore we at UC Berkeley are working on this problem using engineering simulations with community engagement. One of the deadliest wildfire events is the Camp Fire that happened on November 8th in 2018. Unfortunately, 85 people were killed and burned 18,000 single-family homes and 500 businesses in the town of Paradise that had a population of 26,000. One of the important characteristics of the fire was that fire propagated much faster than what was expected due to the strong wind, and the fire reached and absorbed the town within 2 hours after the fire was detected. All the residents had to evacuate, and this led to traffic jam as shown in this photo. Moreover, the cell phone network went down during the middle of the evacuation, and country level traffic congestion lasted for 5 hours, and many people were trapped inside the fire during the evacuation. Our research team at UC Berkeley has been developing a simulator in which wildfire model, communication model, and traffic model are tightly coupled. The figure on the right shows the simulation results. Hourly changes in traffic are shown, and the results are validated against the observations. One of the important findings is the importance of regional communication in terms of traffic control. The traffic signal at the entrance of one of the cities, destination city, Chico, in this case, were not effective, reduced the traffic jam that was created in this particular road called Skyway Road. So the red shows the sort of a traffic jam and the blue show less traffic, but you can see the traffic jam developing in the simulation, which we also see in the real event. We are also working with local community to address the issue of evacuation in different wildfire scenarios. For example, we're working with our colleagues in Bolinas, which is located north of San Francisco. As you can see from this particular figure, the town is surrounded by forest, and there's only one way out. So we're conducting variety of simulations. For example, these figures on the bottom show the difference in traffic congestion when some cell communication is working, when some communication is partially damaged, and cell communication is not working, for example. And the purple line shows the traffic congestions. If the cell communication is good, you can evacuate faster, but if cell communication is not good, because you can't send your signals, messages, it becomes congested. Our research team member Tom Myrona at UC Davis created a board game to build wildfire resilience capacity in the community and at the same time extract local knowledge to improve our simulations. And then as we now move from board game, we're moving to using Unity to showcase our simulation results to the community as shown over here. So this particular video shows what we have as a conceptual one, and then this is a prototype that we start to develop. So you can see that we have a sort of a concept where people start using a simulation to understand, are you a single player? And you put your name, you see what kind of evacuees you have in terms of what are the who are you evacuate with, and then you can look at different vehicles, and then where you start. And then you start doing the simulation with that particular information that you put in. And I'll show you our prototype first over here on the right. So you click who you're going to evacuate with, and then where you start your origin and destination, and then you start the game and the simulation. And as you can see that the images come from Street View to showcase it's really that your community that you're working on. And then you're these cars are coming from the simulation, how many cars are in front of you. And you can see the Unity platform of using sort of a wildfire propagating over here where the wildfire model comes into the Unity. And also traffic simulation comes into the Unity. And therefore, people will appreciate the sort of a danger they may having, depending on whether you have a communication or not communication, or when the free falls down on the street. And if it free tolls fall down, then you may have some electrical company to remove that tree, the electrical power or tree, and therefore that leads to a delay in the in terms of evacuation. So these are the scenarios that we want the participant to appreciate. So that's all I have from today. Thank you very much, and I'll pass this to Mike.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Leslie. So I'm Steve Grubbs, and if you remember the film E.T., which was one of my favorites back in the day, there's that moment when E.T. goes into the classroom, goes to school, and suddenly they're in science class, and they see all these frogs, and the frogs are about to undergo this dissection. And of course, E.T., having this big heart of his, he lets all the frogs go and they run around the school. Now, of course, back in the day, they didn't have virtual reality or the tools of real-time 3D as an option, but today we do. And so one of the things that we have focused on is the recreation, the simulation of biology. And we started with our floppy frog, which of course people loved. And a little fact, my little Cliff Clavin fact here, that 60% of students in the United States go to school in states where they have the option to opt out of animal dissections. And so this was the inspiration for us to start in biology. Well, fast forward a couple of years, and we came across a university in Nashville, Tennessee, Fisk University, one of the great HBCUs in America, the school of John Lewis, the famous congressman who started the civil rights movement. And they have about 1,000 students. They're not a big school. They don't have a big budget. And so their pre-med students would go to Vanderbilt University to take classes for anatomy and exploring cadavers. Well, we felt like this was a place that we could be helpful. So we contacted our friends at T-Mobile to see if they would come in on the process and help pay for some of it. They were willing to. And so we were able to develop a cadaver lab for Fisk University, now Michigan State and others, where students can essentially learn the same things. Now, I'm going to go ahead and do a quick share so you can see this while I talk about it, so you don't have to just look at me. And you should be able to see my screen now. And I'll play this so you can see it. So as you can see, this is the bone structure, the skeletal structure. And there are different parts of this lab that the students at Fisk get to participate in. And the skeletal structure is one of them. But you can see, first of all, that it's synchronous, meaning that it's not a solo, isolating experience, that more than one student can be in the space at the same time. And you can have your professor in there teaching as you go along. So you'll see there's a camera, and so the camera can focus on different parts of the body. Now, this is the actual cadaver. And the professor or a student can pull organs out. How much fun is that? You can take those organs and you can learn about them in a more in-depth way. So you can expand it so large that you can step inside it with your professor. And this is impactful because think about learning, let's say that you want to learn about diseased hearts or hearts that might need a stent because they have plaque in them. They have a widowmaker and the patient is about ready to have a heart attack. Imagine learning by being able to stand inside that heart, looking at how the plaque accumulates and then placing the stent in there. What a great way to learn. And so Fisk University chose this as a model that they wanted to use, and now it's this semester in place at Fisk University. So I'm going to stop sharing now and finish out my remarks. So the bottom line is this. As we move into this third version of the web that people talk about, this metaverse, you're going to see solutions all over the world that use real-time 3D and that give us this option that I call geographic agnosticism. All that really means is that a student in rural Mexico will have the same opportunities as a student in New York City, that a student anywhere in the world can study with other students for the lessons that matter the most to them. And we're excited to be working on this project with Unity, and we think it will make a big impact moving forward. So Leslie, thank you for having Victory XR and myself today. We appreciate it, and I'm open to any questions along with the rest of the panel.
Thank you. Thank you all again for just sharing some of the amazing work that your organizations have created to transform communities and inspire educators and students to develop real-time 3D projects. So, again, if you have any questions, make sure to put them in the chat box below. And I'd like to get started with a first question here. Could each of you provide what's like a recommendation you would provide for an education institution or an organization looking to get started to create a social impact real-time 3D project?
I can get started if you want, Leslie. The biggest advice, number one, is just dip your toe in the water. So if you use Unity's platform, when we first started, we used the free version till we got big enough to upgrade to be the real thing. And you have plenty of students in your graphic arts, graphic design departments who want to do these sorts of things. Start letting them find some use cases. And I promise you that there are organizations in your community who will provide grants for use cases that make a difference. And the last piece of this is that there are expected to be 10 million untethered headsets sold this year. So you have plenty of students out there who are engaged in this process. And if they have the opportunity to build something for one of these metaverse worlds under the guidance of a professor, wow, that propels your university ahead of 99% of them out there.
That's some great advice. And just to build off of that, in the three examples that were shown today, there was in all of them custom development. And I know sometimes virtual reality and augmented reality can be a little bit daunting as to diving right into that. And look for some low hanging fruits, whether it's using an existing package that's out there, just to kind of proof of concept the idea before looking at to some custom development. But there's a lot of great resources, whether it's pre-built applications or even assets in the Unity Asset Store that can be used to help get, as Steve alluded to, get your foot dipped in the water. But don't worry about trying to start big. Start small and look at using something that's already out there. And then if that's proven to be well, then look at custom development that can be more specified to your use case needs.
Yeah, thanks a lot. And I think I agree with everything that my colleagues said, Mike and Steve. And my point here is that as a researchers, we do a lot of simulations and we really want to visualize our results. And what I'm trying to say is that school kids and then university students, there are a lot of simulations out there that we want to visualize and we can work together. And then I think Unity can be one of the platform, and virtual reality and augmented reality will help. And I think by working together, we can impact the community in terms of our engineering outcomes.
Awesome, thank you. And I know some of you mentioned through your presentation and through this last question answered about the importance of partnering with communities, right, in organizations or local organizations. Can you so how did you reach out to them? Like how do you get that conversation started in terms of partnering with these type of organizations?
I can start again. We haven't had much problem finding people to partner with because for the most part, once you tell the world what you're doing on social media, people are looking for if you need a plumber, you pick up the internet phone book and you call 100 in your community. If you need somebody that works in this space, real-time 3D, there aren't a lot. And so people just want to know who's doing it and what are they doing. So use social media, and for the most part, they'll find you. Having said that, the last piece is almost every high school now has a great could be an IT person, could be a CTE person, but they're looking for folks like us. And so that's my recommendation.
One of the things that we did as we started to establish the START initiative that I mentioned in my presentation is we reached out to a lot of community organizations and brought them in for a visioning session to really identify what their pain points were. Because as we all probably can allude to, you don't create virtual reality for the sake of creating virtual reality. It's to solve a problem. And so we worked with them and had a big brainstorming session where they kind of identified all of their pain points and then really focused in on some key common themes there using some whiteboards. And so inviting community partners into a space where you can talk with them and really make it about them, about what are their problems, what do they need solved, and then how can you, through this real-time 3D development, how can you help them solve those problems? And so that's something that we have found useful in engaging with community partners.
Yeah, in our wildfire research, we go across different community members, really start from sort of a fire departments, but also local community residents who are affected by wildfires, and also to the sort of state governments and that sort of thing. So the community is quite diverse, and but what really happens is really they start talking to each other and saying, "Oh, this is really cool, this is interesting," and that's sort of a mushrooms. And what really started with the Bolinas is really having a small news article that came into their newspaper that skyrocket sort of mushroom. So again, communication, local communication, formal communication, local, no, informal communication, it just started to grow. And once it begins, it will mushroom very quickly.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much. So I have a question here for Steve. What plans does Victory XR have to scale or to reach even more learners?
Yeah, so great question. There are two models out there. One is the model where the headsets are on campus or in a classroom, but the Morehouse College model actually is different. Every student that takes a VR class checks a headset out at the beginning of the semester, and then they might take one or two classes from really this dynamic group of professors at Morehouse College. But at the same time, they can also now meet after school in the student lounge or in the chess club, that type of thing. So, we believe that not just ourselves, but others will deploy these solutions into schools and universities where eventually every student will have a headset, and that accessing remote labs will just become commonplace. And 10 years ago, people couldn't imagine taking a class, or maybe 15 years ago, a class online. In 10 years, they won't be able to imagine taking a remote lab without immersive real-time 3D technologies.
Thank you. Here's another one. So it takes a lot of time, as we know, to develop content for AR VR education. So when it comes to impact at scale, what do you think is necessary to help AR and VR education become more ubiquitous? So I guess if Dr. Soga or Mike McCready, one of you want to answer that one?
Yeah, scalable is very important because we're looking at local community engagement. So we want to make sure that virtual reality, augmented reality is the local part. So for example, we're grabbing street view images, but then we have to manipulate to create something that comes into simulation. And we have to automate these to make sure that we can be scalable. And that's the challenge that we have, and using computer vision techniques and all these things to put it together. And it's a research challenge for us, but at the same time that excite our researchers to go forward. And the scalability is one of the issue that we're struggling, but we're tackling with.
Um,
And that's a really good question about the scalability. Just to kind of briefly talk, we're working with a energy provider to create a high voltage training simulator to improve their safety of their employees. And as we've been going through this process, we've realized the importance of scalability. And so looking at developing frameworks that will allow us to easily roll out training, whether it's a variety of kind of interaction and assessments, but also looking at tapping into some existing tools that are out there. I mentioned that before earlier, but that are really leveraged for the assessment side. So that's going to be a really important thing going forward here is how do we develop this content quickly? And I think the short answer is to look at toolkits, and whether you use your own toolkits or develop your own, where you're not reinventing the wheel every time you want to create another training simulator. And it sounds like some of the stuff that Victory XR kind of has that addressed, but looking at ways to roll out quickly these interactions and these assessments.
Awesome. Thank you. One of the questions here is like, I'm sure, there might have been challenges in creating the project. So I guess like we can start off with Dr. Soga. So as you were creating the wildfire simulations, like, did you encounter any challenges with like deploying it, executing it? And if so, how did you overcome those challenges?
I think the challenge is really to see what the community wants and figure out what they want. And that's the challenge that we have. We tend to think about, oh, make it really realistic and that sort of thing, but it may not be effective in terms of the purpose of wildfire evacuation. So it's trying to figure out what is right is the challenge that we have. And it may depend on the community level, but it can be dependent on the state level, or it can be so depending on the level of interest and where you're adopting, it becomes a different platforms, and that's where we're trying to figure out what is the best way forward. So that's the challenge for us.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm on mute. So my next question is for Mike. Can you share the impact that your technologies have had, not only for the caregivers, but also the dementia clients?
So this project is actually still in development. So I can't speak much to the care or to the clients, but to the caregivers, it's starting to inspire them to and give them hope as to alternate ways of being able to get that education that they are currently faced with, or have offerings to. So it's for them, it's getting them excited to be a part of a real-time 3D program. Like I said, we have a number of care facilities who are working with on this and guiding us on the scenarios, and so it's giving them that excitement there. And hopefully next year, if we come back to the Unity for Humanity Summit, we'll be able to speak more to the effect that it has on caregivers in the facilities, but also to clients. But one thing I will mention though is this project, as well as the other projects, the impact that it has on researchers. It's creating a spark within the college, and we're seeing a lot of researchers and faculty wanting to explore applying this real-time 3D applications within their own classrooms, within their own research opportunities, and so it's creating that critical mass, which we all need to see to have that grow beyond a few keeners in the immersive technology space.
Leslie, can I jump in there on Mike's solution? One of the things that we haven't really talked about much yet, but is one of the features of virtual reality or benefits is that it teaches people empathy. And, I think we all agree if there's something the world needs now, it's probably more empathy. And so being able to actually, and the PwC study showed this, that people are more emotionally connected to what they learn in virtual reality than not. And so that's why what Mike's working on is really important for both training and just, for kids, students to learn anyway.
Yes, absolutely. So speaking of students, this can be for anyone, these technologies or virtual reality classrooms, simulations, etc. Um, were there any students involved in creating these projects? Or even educators or professors, were they involved? And if so, could you speak to that engagement?
I can speak to it from our perspective. So something that we have not publicly announced yet is we will be, I'll announce it here, we'll be rolling out probably next week the La Amistad slave ship. And so, that was a famous slave ship. Steven Spielberg made a movie about it, and we built it. And then we asked the Morehouse College professors to tour it and to provide us feedback. And they really felt that we had not done a good enough job of showing the pain and suffering on the ship. So we went to work We added more pain and suffering, and really try to create a situation where you can truly understand what it was like. So that's an important relationship and partnership.
Awesome. Thank you. So it looks like we're almost at time here. Again, I want to thank you all for joining us today, and we hope that you were inspired by all of our amazing speakers to get started in transforming communities with real time 3D. So thanks again, and I hope you all enjoy the rest of the summit.
Mm.
Thanks again.
Thank
Thank
you,
you all.
Leslie.